was given a donkey, and all that was left at the third son was a cat called Puss. The brother thought to himself, "My brothers will not starve, but what good is this cat? Even if I skin him and eat him, I'll soon be hungry again." Puss did not like the sound of that, so he said, "Fetch me a pair of boots, a hat, and a sack." The miller's son was surprised that Puss could speak. He got boots, and he got a hat, and he got a sack. Puss put on the boots, put on the hat, and grabbed the sack, and went out to hunt. When he came back, he had a plump, juicy, fat rabbit in his bag. Instead of eating it, he went to the palace and asked to see the king. He was brought before the king, and he said, "I have brought you this fine present from my master, the Marquis of Carabas." The king was very happy, and he said to thank his master. The next day he came back with 2 plump pheasants. And again, the king was very happy and asked to thank his master. The next day, for several days, he brought back presents that he said was from his master, the Marquis of Carabas. One day he heard that the king and his daughter were traveling through the countryside. Puss ran home and he said, "Take off your clothes and jump into the lake." The miller's son was surprised, and he said, the miller's son was surprised, and he took off his clothes and he jumped into the lake. Soon they saw the king's carriage approaching. Puss ran yelling, "Help, help! My master was robbed of his clothes and thrown into the lake." The king ordered to stop and got his finest men, and they tugged and pulled and tugged him out of the lake. And he ordered for his finest clothes. He put on the clothes and presented himself before the king. The king said, would you like to join us on our travel through the countryside?" And he said, "Sure." And he hopped in the carriage and rode off. Meanwhile, Puss ran ahead, and he convinced some farmers that they were working on the land of the Marquis of Carabas. A couple of minutes later, the king's carriage approached, and looking at the farmers, he ordered the carriage to stop, and he said, "Whose land are you working on?" And they said, "We're working on the land of the Marquis of Carabas." The king was very happy. Puss ran to a castle that belonged to an ogre that claimed to have magic powers. Puss said to the ogre, "I've traveled all this way to see if you truly do have power." The ogre roared, and he turned himself to a lion. Puss was very scared. But still, he said, "Can you turn into something as small as a mouse?" Puss turned into a small, tiny mouse. Puss pounced on it and gobbled it up. Meanwhile, the king's carriage was approaching. Puss told the finest cooks to prepare a fine meal. He went out and said, "You are most welcome to get comfortable in my king's palace." Puss went inside and sat down. The king, the princess, and the miller's son came in and sat down too, and they ate and ate and ate. You must wonder what become of that clever cat. Puss took off the boots, the hat, and put away the sack. And he decided to be a normal house pet. Thank you. This is my story, The Journey of Lizzie. Once upon a time, there was a fairy named Lizzie. She lost her wings because of a meat stick. She lost her wings one day when she was walking by a tree, and a meat stick jumped out and took her wings. So she went on a journey to find her wings again. She borrowed a hot air balloon from a fairy named Tinkerbell. And one day she found his house on a mountain, and she knocked on the door. And Meat Stick walked out and said, and she said, "Where are my wings? I won't tell you until we give me French fries." They said, "Okay," and abracadabra, he had French fries. So Lizzie walked out the door and lived happy ever after. Thank you.
My name is Landon, and I'm going to tell you the story of the Little Red Riding Hood. Once upon a time, a little girl named Little Red Riding Hood went on a quest to find someone who was part robber, part wolf. She didn't know who it actually was because he always wore a funny mask over his face. And he had a pet lion, so he was really scared. And one day, the little girl and the wolf met up. And the wolf made the Little Red Riding Hood a deal. If she won a battle, then he would reveal his mask, reveal his identity. So they fought, and they fought. And at the end of the battle, the Little Red Riding Hood won. But the wolf refused to take off his mask. So they fought one more battle. So they fought, and they fought. And the Little Red Riding Hood won. And the wolf said, "Okay, I'll reveal my real identity." And do you want to know who it was?
Yes.
It was her father. She was so disappointed and so angry that she made him disappear. And the rest of the family lived happily ever after. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jasper Schoenfeld. I'm going to tell you the story of that stubborn turnip. Once upon a time, there's an old man and an old woman living on their farm with their grandson, with their horse, with their cow, with their dog, with their chicken, with their cat. One day, the grandmother decided it was time to plant her turnip seeds. Long, straight rows. This grandson would weed them and water them. He would even sing to them. One day, the grandfather and the grandmother decided it was time to pick the turnips. So the grandfather grabbed hold of the turnip and he pulled. But that stubborn turnip would not come up. Then he asked the grandmother for help. So the grandmother put her arms around the grandfather grabbed hold of the turnip, and they pulled, and they pulled, puffed and they puffed. But what do you know? That stubborn turnip would not come up. Then they asked the grandson. So the grandson put his arms around the grandmother. Grandmother put her arms around the grandfather, grabbed turnip, and they pulled, and they pulled, puffed, and they puffed. But that stubborn turnip would not come up. Then they asked the horse. So the horse put her hoof around the grandson, and the grandson put his arms around the grandmother. Grandmother put her arms around the grandfather, grabbed hold of the turnip, and they pulled, and they pulled, and they huffed, and they puffed. But that stubborn turnip would not come up. And before you know it, there was nobody else to ask in the barnyard. And then the chicken put her wings around the cat. The cat put his paws around the dog, and the dog put his paws around the cow. Cow put her hooves around the horse. A horse put her hooves around the grandson, who put his arms around the grandmother, and the grandmother put her arms. The grandfather grabbed hold of the turnip, and they pulled, and they pulled, puffed, and they puffed. But that stubborn turnip would not come up. Then they came out a little mouse. Said, "Sweet, can I help?" "You can't help." "Haha, you can't help." So the mouse put his tiny paws around the chicken, and the chicken put her wings around the cat, and the cat put her paws around the dog, and the dog put his paws around the cow, and the cow put his hooves around the horse, and the horse put his hooves around the boy, who put his arms around the grandmother. Grandmother put her arms around the grandfather, and they pulled, and they pulled. They huffed, and they puffed, and they pulled, and they pulled, and they huffed, and they puffed. But finally, that stubborn turnip finally came up. But just with a tiny bit of help, can make a big contribution. Thank you.
Hi, my story is called Daisy the Confused. I have a repeating phrase that I like to do with you. It goes like this. Once there was a dog named Daisy who was a bit confused. Okay, here we go.
Once there was a dog named Daisy who was a bit confused.
She was taken from her mom and dad and didn't know what type of animal she was. On Monday, she spent the afternoon chasing every bird she saw. That night, she went to bed wondering if she was a pointer.
Once there was a dog named Daisy who was a bit confused.
On Tuesday, she spent the morning laying with her family. That night, she went to bed wondering if she was a cat.
Once there was a dog named Daisy who was a bit confused.
On Tuesday, she spent lunch swimming in the pool. That night, she went to bed wondering she was a shark.
Once there was a dog named Daisy who was a bit confused.
On Thursday, she spent the evening laying on the roof. That night, she went to bed wondering she was a squirrel.
Once there was a dog named Daisy who was a bit confused.
On Friday, she spent the afternoon running and running and running. That night, she went to bed wondering she was a cheetah.
Once there was a
Wait! Named Daisy, who was no longer confused. On Saturday, she realized she just had to be herself. A perfect dog for her family. Thank you.
Hello, I'm gonna tell you a story called Beauty and the Beast. Once upon a time, there was a rich merchant who had 3 daughters. The first was mean and nasty, but the third, Beauty, was sweet and kind. One day, the rich merchant received news that his ships had sunk in a storm. He became very sad, and his 2 eldest children grumbled because now they were very poor. But it's good that one of the ships was floating. The next day, the rich merchant went on the trip to find a ship. All the jobs was left to Beauty because he never complained. So when he found the ship, he asked the 3 daughters. About what they want. The 2 mean, nasty eldest children asked for dresses with jewels, but Beauty only asked for a rose. But suddenly, when the merchant reached the port, he had been robbed out of his ship. He got sad and he sadly walked home. While he was walking home, it was a snowy storm. Then he saw a castle nearby. He went inside to find one, and he saw there was a table laid with delicious food. He sat down happily and ate until he was full. That time, after he was done eating, he found a comfortable bed in a castle and slept. The next day he woke up and he saw the table was laid with food again. He sat down and ate, and when he came off the castle, he came to a rose bush. He remembered Beauty's request, but when he picked the rose, an ugly beast had suddenly jumped from the rose garden. He told in a scary voice, "How dare you steal my rose? You shall die." The merchant got scared, and he explained Beauty's request to the beast. The beast agreed, but he made him a promise. "If you don't bring Beauty, you shall die." Then the scared merchant had promised the beast and went off home. When he arrived, all his children was happy to see him. He explained everything to Beauty, and Beauty set off to go to the beast with his father. But when his father dropped her off, he was very sad, and he sadly waved goodbye. But Beauty waved back. But even though Beauty found out that the beast was kind, she still missed her father. One day, she asked the beast if she could go back to her father. The beast agreed, but he made her a promise. If you don't come back, I shall die." Then Beauty promised and went back to her father. Every night when she slept, she had a weird dream. She thought that a handsome prince had turned into a beast by a wicked witch spell, and the only way to break it is a honest and kind heart. But and also another part of the dream, Beauty dreamed that if she stayed so long, the beast might get sick. So, but the next day, she decided to go back to the beast. But when she arrived, she found that her dream was true. The beast was laying down under a tree, and he was getting sick and sick and sick. The beauty had ran so quickly to the beast that she hugged him so tightly. But suddenly, the beast had turned into a handsome prince. The handsome prince asked her to marry him, and they married. And then they lived happily ever after. Thank you.
Hi, today I'll be telling you about the story about Goldilocks and the three bears. Once upon a time, there were three bears who lived in a pretty cottage deep in the woods. There was Mama Bear, Papa Bear, and Baby Bear. One day, Mama Bear made some porridge for breakfast. Before they sat down, they decided to go for a walk to let it cool. And on that very same day, and that very same morning, a girl named Goldilocks was out for a walk too. 20 minutes after the bears left, Goldilocks discovered the house. So she went and she wanted to live there. So she went to the door and knocked on it. She didn't hear any footsteps or any voices. And then she tested the handle to see if it was unlocked. She found it was unlocked and went in. She went into the kitchen. And found the 3 bowls of porridge. And as soon as she saw them, she was feeling very, very hungry. So she sat down and ate them. First she tried Papa Bear's bowl. Oh, it was too hot. Then she tried Baby Bear's bowl and Mama Bear's bowl. It was too cold. Then she tried Baby Bear's bowl. It was just right. Then after the big meal, she went to find somewhere to sit down. She went to the living room and found the 3 big chairs. First she tried Papa Bear's chair. It was too hard. Then she tried Baby Bear's and Mama Bear's chair. And it was too soft. Then she tried Baby Bear's chair. And it was just right, but she was a little bit too big for it. And it cracked all into splinters. Whenever it broke, she was feeling very sleepy. So she went up to the bed. She saw the 3 beds and went and tested them. First she tried Papa Bear's bed, it was too high. Then she tried Mama Bear's bed, it was too low. Then she tried Baby Bear's bed, and it was just right. And she went right to sleep. As soon as she went to sleep, the bears arrived. They went into the kitchen to have some food. Baby Bear got the spoons, Papa Bear got the napkins, and Mama Bear lit the candle. They sat down to eat, but before they ate, Papa Bear said, "Someone's been eating our porridge." Mama Bear said, "Yes, you're right." And Baby Bear said, "Someone ate all my porridge." Then they went to sit down. But Papa Bear said, "Someone's been sitting in my chair." Mama Bear said, "Someone's been sitting in my chair." And Baby Bear said, "Someone's sat in my chair. Look at all the splinters." Then they went up to the bedrooms. They tiptoed up the stairs to see if the intruder was still there. They opened the door, tiptoed in the room, closed the door, tiptoed to the bed. Papa Bear whispered, no one's in my bed." Mama Bear whispered, "No one's in my bed." Baby Bear whispered, "Someone's still in my bed." Papa Bear roared, "What?" And this surely woke Goldilocks up. He jumped up, pleading, saying, sorry, sorry, sorry. Jumped out of bed, through the door, squeak. Downstairs, pam, pam, pam. And out the front door, slam. To never be seen again by the three bears ever again. Thank you. Hi, my name is Gianna, and the title of my story is The Invisible Easter. Once upon a time, there was a bunny named Jerry and a hedgehog named Tom. They were best friends. One day, they were very excited because the next day was Easter. On Easter morning, they woke up and went outside, but there were no Easter eggs. They had no idea that the Easter eggs were invisible. They searched all over the forest, but they couldn't find the Easter eggs. They kept running into the eggs, and that's how they figured it out. Finally, Jerry said, Tom, I think the Easter eggs are invisible. And they started finding them everywhere. And once you found an Easter egg and put it in the basket, they take gay color. And so they ran all over the forest collecting the eggs. And the Easter bunny hadn't quite gotten out of the forest. And they started to catch up with him. And they were just about to catch him when he threw an Easter egg that made them fall asleep for 10 years. 10 years later, a happy little worker ant came walking along the path. Then he saw Tom and Jerry. They completely covered the path that the ant was using, and the ant could not get through. And did you know that the only way to break the spell was to bite them? And so the ant couldn't get through, and he got very upset, and he went up to them and bit them. Sure enough, 10 years later, they woke up on the same day, and there were 10 years worth of Easter eggs to gather. They ran all over the forest as fast as they could, collecting the Easter eggs. And they couldn't find one particular egg, the golden egg. They searched everywhere, but they just couldn't find it. The Easter bunny had hidden it in the tallest tree in the forest. And the Easter bunny was hopping along, thinking, ha ha, they'll never find the eggs, when Tom and Jerry jumped out from behind a bush and grabbed the Easter bunny. Tell us where the golden egg is, they shouted. No, I won't tell you. Tell us now. Fine, I will tell you. It's in the tallest tree in the forest, but have fun getting up there, suckers. So they started looking up at all the trees until they came to the tallest one. Tom, the Easter bunny was right. How are we going to get up there? I don't know. Wait a second. I do know. I'll use my spikes. So up the tree he went, as higher and higher, until he got to the very top. Then he started feeling around because, as you know, all the Easter eggs were invisible. Until he found the golden egg. Jerry, I found it, he called down. Open it, and he called up. And so he opened it. Jerry, it's full of money and candy. And they lived happily ever after. Thank you.
One day, Pete the cat went out for a walk in his new white shoes. He loved his shoes so much that he could sing a song. I love my white shoes, I love my white shoes, I love my white shoes, I love my white shoes. Oh no! Pete stepped in a pile of strawberries. What color did it turn his shoes?
Red.
Did Pete cry? Goodness, no. He just kept walking along and singing his song. I love my red shoes. 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 Oh no! Pete stepped in a pile of blueberries. What color did it turn his shoes? Blue! Did Pete cry? Goodness, no. He just kept walking along and singing his song. I I love my blue shoes. 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 Oh no! Pete stepped in a puddle of mud. What color did it turn his shoes? Brown. Did Pete cry? Goodness, no. He just kept walking along and singing his song. I love my brown shoes. 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 Oh no! Pete stepped in a bucket of water. All the blue, all the red, all the brown were washed away. Now they were wet. Then Pete cried. Goodness no! He just kept walking along and singing his song. I love my wet shoes. 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 No matter what you step in, just keep walking along and singing your song. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Natalie and I'll be reading The Shy Princess. Once there was a princess and she was very shy. And if anybody looked at her, she would start to cry. She stayed inside the castle and wouldn't go out to play. She had no friends to speak of. She just played by herself all day. But one day the king decided to reward someone very well if they could find a way to make that princess come out of her shell. Many people tried many things. It seemed that there was no use. Until one day, a talking chicken said, I know just what to do. The chicken marched up to the castle with something dark under her wing. She put on a pair of sunglasses and started to sing. The princess saw the singing chicken and began to laugh with glee. She thought, if there was a singing chicken wearing sunglasses, no one would be looking at me. The princess was no longer shy, and the kingdom was filled with laughter. And the rich singing chicken and the princess lived happily ever after. Thank you.
Once upon a time, in a quiet town named Louisville, California, there were some woods. And in those woods was a very old shack. I'm talking like 100 years old. In that shack lived a family of 4. The father cut wood, the mother baked pies for the local bakery, and the 2 kids played detectives. As they were playing one day, they were playing that somebody had gotten murdered at the top of a tower or a tree. They saw some smoke. So naturally, they started to follow. They got there, but it was very dark. So the cabin was dark, but they did see some boxes. They read, caution, caution, candy. So naturally, they wanted to know why the candy was so bad. So they cracked open the boxes with a crowbar that was laying nearby. In it was a letter. It said live candy, which spelled backwards is evil candy. There were cherry bombs and tongue licks, not the kind you would eat, but rather the kind you would use to rob a bank or a museum. Just as they were going to run for help, an old grandma came out the door. She asked if they wanted to come inside for candy. Naturally, they agreed. So they went inside. Right when they got inside the door, she grabbed Hansel and threw him inside the trash compactor. And she threatened that she'd push start. But she said she would take him out if Gretel helped her make some more cherry bombs. Gretel agreed.
until the witch ordered her to go get some heavy gunpowder from the freezer. She pretended it was too heavy. So when the witch went in the walk-in freezer to get the gunpowder, she ran out, closed the door, and locked all 30 padlocks. She grabbed Hansel out of the compactor, and they ran to get help. Turns out she was on FBI's most wanted, and they got $500,000. Now, if you look in that forest, you see a nice house where the father makes wood items, the mother makes pies, and the kids run a detective service game.
Story of the Gruffalo. One day a mouse took a stroll through the deep dark wood. A fox saw the mouse and the mouse looked good. Where are you headed to, little brown mouse? Come have lunch in my underground house. It's terribly kind of you, fox, but no, I'm going to have lunch with the Gruffalo. A Gruffalo? What's a Gruffalo? A Gruffalo? Why didn't you know? He has terrible claws and terrible tusks and terrible teeth and his terrible jaws. And where are you meeting him? Over by these rocks. And his favorite food is roasted fox. Roasted fox? It's time I go. And away Fox sped to his underground house. Silly old fox, doesn't he know there's no such thing as a Gruffalo? So the mouse walked on. An owl saw the mouse and the mouse looked good. Where are you headed to, little brown mouse? Come have tea in my treetop house. It's terribly kind of you, owl. But no, I'm going to have tea with the Gruffalo. A Gruffalo? What's a Gruffalo? A Gruffalo? Why didn't you know? He has knobbly knees and turned out toes and a poisonous wart at the end of his nose. And where are you meeting him? Over by the stream. And his favorite food is owl ice cream. Owl ice cream? It's time I go. And away Owl flew to his treetop house. Silly old owl, doesn't he know there's no such thing as a Gruffalo? So the mouse walked on. A snake saw the mouse and the mouse looked good. Where are you headed to, little brown mouse? Come have a feast in my log pile house. It's terribly kind of you, snake. But no, I'm going to have a feast with the Gruffalo. Gruffalo? What's a Gruffalo? A Gruffalo? Why didn't you know? He has orange eyes and a black tongue, and he has purple prickles all over his back. And where are you meeting him? Over by the lake. And his favorite food is scrambled snake. So the mouse walked on. Silly old snake, doesn't he know there's no such thing as a Gruffalo? Oh, what is this terrible creature with terrible claws and terrible tusks and terrible teeth and his terrible claws? He has knobbly knees and turned out toes and a poisonous wart at the end of his nose. He has orange eyes and a black tongue, and he has purple prickles all over his back. Oh help, it's a Gruffalo! You look good on a piece of bread. Don't call me good. Don't call me good. I'm the scariest thing in this wood. Follow behind me and you'll see. So the Gruffalo said, go along and I'll follow after. So they walked. And the Gruffalo said, I hear a hiss in the grass ahead. It's Snake. Why, hello, Snake. Snake took one look at the Gruffalo, and away Snake slid to his log pile house. Told you, Gruffalo. Outstanding, said the Gruffalo. So they walked on. The Gruffalo said, I hear a hoot in the trees ahead. It's Owl. Why, hello, Owl. Owl took one look at the Gruffalo, and away Owl flew to his treetop house. Told you, said the mouse. Outstanding, little brown mouse. So
they walked on. The Gruffalo said, "I hear footsteps in the path ahead. It's Fox. Why, hello, Fox." Fox took one look at the Gruffalo, and away Fox sped to his underground house. Told you, said the little brown mouse. Outstanding, amazing, said the Gruffalo. The mouse said, "Now my tummy's starting to grumble, and my favorite food is Gruffalo crumble." "Gruffalo crumble," the Gruffalo said. Away the Gruffalo went as fast as the wind. A mouse found a nut, and the nut was good. Thank you.
Hello and good evening. I would like to tell you the story Too Many Fairies, a Celtic Tale. Now, how many of you like to do chores? Yeah, me neither. But you know who does love to do chores? Fairies. So wouldn't it be awesome if you had a fairy to do your chores for you? Well, I'm going to tell you a story about a little old woman who found out that wasn't so great. Once upon a time, there lived a little old woman who lived in a little old house, and she hated doing chores, and she would grumble. She would grumble while she was washing the dishes. She'd complain while she was making the beds. If you walked by her house, you could hear her saying, "Work, work, work. How I hate it, hate it, hate it. All day long." Now one day, while she's complaining, there was a knock on the door, and a small voice saying, "Your luck has come. Open the door. Let me in and you'll work no more." The little old woman stopped what she was doing. Then she peeked out the window, but she didn't see anyone. So she opened the door, and in flew a little fairy who started to wash the dishes. The little old woman shocked, but pleased. She watched the fairy wash the dishes for a while before deciding that, well, she should probably make the beds. But soon she started to grumble. "Work, work, work. How I hate it, hate it, hate it." But as soon as she said these words, there was a knock on the door, and a little voice saying, "Your luck has come. Open the door. Let me in and you'll work no more." The little old woman rushed to the door and let the fairy in. "Come in, come in, come in." Then the fairy started to make the beds. The little old woman started to notice a pattern. So she picked up the knitting, cleared her throat, and began to grumble. "Work, work, work." But she was cut off by a knock on the door. "Oh, goody!" she squealed. Then she ran to the door, threw it open, and pushed the fairy inside before the fairy could even begin her song. Then the fairy started to do the knitting. The little old woman looked around, but she didn't see anything to do. So she sank back in her recliner and did absolutely nothing but listen to the sweet, melodious sound of other people doing her work. Washity, 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 washity went the dishes. Flumpity, flumpity, flumpity went the sheets. Clickety, 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 clickety went the knitting needles. But soon it grew louder and louder and louder. Washity, 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 flumpity, 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 clickety, 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 washity, flumpity, clickety, clickety, flumpity, washity, flumpity, clickety. "Stop!" yelled the little old woman, and the fairy stopped. But do you remember how much fairies love to do chores? And so they began to do their chores all again, but even louder this time. Washity, clickety, flumpity, washity, clickety, flumpity, flumpity, clickety, washity. It was too much for the little old woman, so she ran out of the house. The fairies had done enough. She would rather do her own chores than listen to those fairies one more time. She needed a way to get rid of them. Soon, an idea came to her. So she knocked on her door, and she called, "Fairies, fairies, come quick, come quick. There's just this huge mess outside, and I really need shut the door, and locked it. Then she put everything away. She stacked the dishes in the cupboard and shut it. Then she made beds and tucked them in tight. Then she wound up the yarn ball and stuck the knitting needles in. Then she sat in her chair and waited. Soon the fairies realized they had been tricked. There wasn't any mess outside, and they wanted to be let back in. So they started to knock. "Your luck has come. Open the door. Let us in. You'll work no more." But the little old woman didn't move a muscle, and she didn't say a word. So the fairies tried again, louder this time. "Your luck has come. Open the door. Let us in. You'll work no more." But the little old woman didn't answer. So the fairies tried something else. Dishes, come open the door." But the dishes grunted. "We're stuck in the cupboard. We can't come open the door." So the fairies tried again. Sheets, come open the door." But the sheets twisted. "Oh, we're all tucked in. We can't come open the door." So the fairies tried a third time. Knitting needles, come open the door." But the knitting needles struggled. "We're all stuck in the yarn ball. We can't come open the door." The fairies banged and yelled all afternoon long, till they finally gave up and went home. Then the little old woman got up and was glad that the fairies were gone. But the very next week, as chores started piling up, the little old woman got sick of doing her own chores. And so she started to grumble. "Work, work, work. How I love it, love it, love it." Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Today, I'm going to be telling you the story of the tree sprites and the lions. As we begin, I'm going to need your help, so just follow along to my instructions. Once upon a time, there was a forest. Now you sing it.
Once upon a time there was a forest.
Good job. And in that forest, there are the two tree sprites. These fairy-like creatures protected and nurtured all the trees in the forest. And in that same forest, now you sing it.
And in that same forest,
There are several lions. Now, these were no cowardly lions who might have been afraid of the forest. No, sir. These were big, bold, menacing, ferocious lions. They would roar, and it would terrify all who heard them. And every time they would roar, it would frighten away all the animals, the tree sprites, and even the people who lived on the edge of the forest. Not only that, but they preyed upon the animals in the forest and any people who dared come into their forest. They would leave their bones lying out on the ground for everyone to see. One day, one tree sprite said to the other, "I am so tired of listening to those lions roar and of seeing all the animals running away in fear. And I'm really tired of seeing all those unsightly bones they leave lying around. I think I will scare them away. And they can just go and live in some other forest." The other tree sprite shook her head. "Yes, it is true. They are loud and fierce. They do leave bones everywhere. But I do not think it'd be wise to send them away. They have always been here, and they have a part to play here. Don't you think?" The other tree sprite would not listen. She made up her mind that the forest would be better off without the lions. So she spent her days plotting ways to get rid of them. Finally, one day, she changed herself into a huge, terrifying monster, much bigger than the lions, with a roar much louder than theirs. She roared into their cave and said, "Leave! I eat you up!" The lions ran away from their cave in fear, with the monster chasing them all the way out of the forest and into another forest.
in another land. The next day, it was very quiet in the forest. And it was quiet the day after that. And what do you know? No new bones appeared on the ground. It was quiet for the next several days. The people on the edge of the forest tiptoed in. Are the lions gone? They asked one another. Are they gone? We no longer hear their roars. Perhaps it is safe now for us to come in. And so they did. Gone were the roars of the lions, but they were replaced with a new sound, that of trees falling to the ground, and of houses being built up. Sadly, the tree sprites witnessed all of this. I can't believe I did this, said the one tree sprite. If the lions had been here, this never would have happened. But because of me, we lost our home. Finally, all the animals and birds had to flee the forest. And when the last tree fell, the tree sprites had to leave in search of a new home, one where they would learn to accept all of its creatures. If I could be you, if you could be me, for just 1 hour, if we could find a way to get inside each other's minds. If you could see you through my eyes instead of your ego, I believe you'd be surprised to see that you've been blind. Walk a mile in my shoes. Walk a mile in my shoes. And before you abuse, criticize and accuse, walk a mile in my shoes. Thank you.
Good evening. Today I will be telling you the tale of the businesswoman and the dehydrated pig. Once upon a time there lived a millionaire who wanted to marry a businesswoman, but she would have to be an independent businesswoman. He looked all over the world, but nowhere could he find a girl he liked. So he went back to his mansion depressed. Then one dark and stormy night, when the rain was coming down in sheets and a flash flood warning popped up on his phone, he heard the doorbell ring. So he went to the door and opened it, and he saw a woman. Now, she claimed to be a businesswoman, but boy, she didn't look like it. One of her fake eyelashes was dangling over her eye. She was missing three of her fingernails on one hand and 4 on the other. The rain had made her hair stick to her face, and the water was running into her high-heeled shoes through her heels and out into the toes. But yet, she claimed to be a real businesswoman. Now, the millionaire's mother, who had been listening, remembered a test. They would decide if she was a real businesswoman. So, she took a dehydrated pig and put it under 40 water mattresses. And on top of that, she put 30 feather mattresses, and on top of that, 40 wool blankets. There, the businesswoman would have to sleep all night long. In the morning, when the businesswoman was asked how she had slept, she whined on how she was black and purple and blue all over, and how there must have been a giant boulder under my bed. Now, the businesswoman knew that he had an independent, somewhat whiny businesswoman. So he married her. Now, you may still be able to see that pea in that mansion in the Hall of Fame if no one has stolen it or eaten it. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Cadence.
And my name is Harper.
and today we will be telling you about the time Anansi borrowed money.
Our story is also called a Pourquoi story because it means why in French. Many tales are told like this to explain happenings in nature.
It happened once that Anansi needed money, but because of his bad reputation, no one would lend him anything. He went to the leopard,
Nope,
the bush cow,
no way, dude.
he went to the hawk,
Okay, so that didn't work.
he went to the guinea fowl,
You must be out your mind.
and he went to the turtle.
Okay, you know that didn't work.
But they all refused to him. No later, he thought of the idea to travel to a distant village where he met Oa the snake. He agreed to lend him the money, but there was only one condition.
My money has to be returned in 21 days. But when the 21 days had passed, Anansi still did not have his money. So he thought of ways to get out of his predicament. One way he thought was to dig up some sweet potatoes, or you could call them yams. He dug them up, put them in a basket, and took them back to Oa.
Hi there, Oa. Today is the day I was supposed to repay you for the money that you lent to me. But there is one itty bitty complication. I don't have your money. But, in the meantime, I hope you will accept these yams that I've brought from my garden. Please give me at least 2 or 3 business days and I will be able to repay you. Please accept these yams with my gratitude.
Okay, I'll take the yams, but I have to have my money in 3 days. So, Owa took his half and shared them with his friends. And Anansi took his half and put it back in his basket. Later that day, Owa invited Anansi to stay at his house. Anansi stayed.
But in the middle of the night, Anansi rose from his sleeping mat and grabbed his yams and went far away from the house. He dug up a hole and buried the yams, and when he returned, he left the empty basket in front of the house and went back to sleep.
In that morning, he asked,
"Where are my yams?"
"What do you mean, where are your yams? You were the one that had them." So later that day, Anansi took his basket and went back to his village. He went to the headman and told him his complaint. All the people in the village asked, what kind of thief would take yams from such a generous person as Anansi? So the headman threw a trial to see who the guilty person was. And Anansi said,
"There is only one test to prove for innocence. I have a magic knife that will check to see if those who are innocent, if this crime, but those who are guilty will have to pay." So all the animals lined up to see who was going to be the person that failed the test. First, there was guinea fowl. He came across and drew it on guinea fowl's skin, but he wasn't the culprit. Then he went to the rabbit. Then he went to the turtle, but no one was hurt. Later, Oa the snake came, and he said,
"Test me."
"Huh? Oh no, it surely wouldn't be you that would have stolen my yams."
I said, "Test me."
No, it's unthinkable.
Test me.
No,
Test
no.
me, test me. I said test me. Test me. Test me.
Very well. If it is your wish to take my test, then so be it. Oa drew his knife across, Anansi drew his knife across Oa's skin. But for all the animals, You wonder why no one got hurt. That is because he used the blunt edge, but this time he used the sharp edge. Going across Owa's skin, he killed him. All the people said, "Oh no, oh no, he has failed the test. He must be guilty." However, as Owa died, he rolled his belly to the sky as if saying,
Oh God, please look in my stomach and see if I ate Anansi yams.
"It is for this reason,
That is why,
pourquoi,
whenever a snake is killed,
that he rolls or turns his belly to the sky, calling upon God to judge him for his innocence." Thank you.
Hi, my name is Eli Schoenfeld, and today I'm going to be telling you the story of the stonecutter. Once there lived a stonecutter who was very strong and talented. Every day he took his axe to the mountain to cut rocks. Out of those rocks he made beautiful sculptures and sold them for rich people's gardens. Even though he was strong and talented, he always looked at people and thought, I wish I was like them. One day, as he was taking stone to the market to sell, he saw people gathered around, and he pushed through them to see what they were looking at. In the middle of it all was the emperor being carried through the streets. People were fanning him and feeding him fruit. And he thought, I wish I was the emperor. Little did he know that there was a spirit on the mountain that looked out for him. She had heard him making wishes like this for far so long that she decided to grant this wish to see if it would truly make him happy. Next thing the stonecutter knew, he was the emperor, being carried through the streets, being fanned and fed fruit. And he thought, I have done it! I am the most powerful being in the world. Or so he thought. Despite the fanning, he realized that his throat was dry and he was sweating, and he looked up and saw the sun. And he thought, the sun is more powerful than me, for it can burn even an emperor. And he thought, I don't want to be an emperor now. I want to be the sun. Moments later, he realized that he was the sun, high up in the sky, and he could reach down and burn people, burn crops, and dry up rivers. And that's what he did. And he thought to himself, I am the most powerful person in the world. Or so he thought. Later he realized that he could not reach down and burn people or dry up rivers. And he looked down and saw a cloud. And he thought, the cloud is more powerful than me, for it can block my rays. And he thought, I no longer want to be the sun. I want to be a cloud. Then he turned into a great big rain cloud. And he rained down on the earth so hard, and he made the rivers overflow and create floods. And that's what he did. And he thought to himself, I am the most powerful thing in the world. Or so he thought. Then something began to push him this way and that, and tear him and rip him into pieces, until he was just little puffs of air. And he thought, what could be doing this to me? And then he realized that it was the wind. And he thought, the wind is more powerful than me, for it can reduce me to just a little puffs of air. And he thought, I no longer want to be a cloud. I want to be the wind. And then he became the wind and blew this way and that way. And he blew on the land, bending and breaking trees. He blew on the water, creating great big waves. And he blew in the air, creating great storms. And that's what he did. And he thought to himself, I am the most powerful thing in the world. Or so he thought. One one day he came to something that he could not move nor break. No matter how hard he blew on it, he blew and he blew against the mountain, but it would not budge. And he thought, the mountain is more powerful than me, for I cannot move it a bit. And he thought, I no longer want to be the wind. I want to be a mountain. And that's what happened. He became a mountain, sitting so high and majestically above the land. And he thought, I am the most powerful thing in the world. Nothing can touch me. Or so he thought. One day he felt a terrible pain near his base and looked way down the mountainside and saw that someone was chipping away at him. Do you know who was doing this? It was a stonecutter. And he thought, a stonecutter is more powerful than me, for it can just reduce me to a pile of pebbles. And he thought, I no longer want to be a mountain. I just want to be a stonecutter. Now what do you think? Should he get his wish? Well, he did. And people began to say that he was quite happy just the way he was, because he knew he was perfect in his own way, just the way he was. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Cody Schoenfeld, and I'm going to be telling you a story of the Dead Man's Hand. There are many tales of the Wild West, but I'm going to tell you a story of Wild Bill Hickok. He was born in Troy Grove, Illinois on May 27, 1837, to William Alexander Hickok and Polly Butler Hickok. He had four brothers and 2 sisters, and his parents were God-fearing Baptists who expected him to keep up with his chores on the farm and go to church every Sunday. His parents also worked along the Underground Railroad, where they smuggled slaves out of the South. This is when he first got his taste of hostile gunfire, when him and his father were chased by law officers who suspected them of carrying more than just hay in their wagon. At the age of 14, Bill's father was killed because of his abolition. I could tell you how he saved state churches from Indians and bandits, but that's a whole other story. Or I could tell you how he killed a cinnamon bear with a 6-inch knife, but that's another story. Or I could tell you how he worked as a peace officer and then later working for the Pony Express, but that's a whole other story. Or I could tell you how he exchanged profanities and gunfire, killing 1 man outright and wounding 2 others, but that's another story. What's important to know is that as Bill's fame grew, or as the tellings were told, his fame grew. He killed 1 man. No, it was 3. No, it was a band of the most dangerous desperados. Contrary to his raising, Bill had to grow certain habits. One of those habits was you looked somebody in the eye and you could tell something about them. Others were that you never set your back towards the door. On one hot August afternoon, Bill walked into the Dead Man's Saloon. What I meant to say was that he was playing poker with 7 men. One of those men was Jack McCall, who lost heavily. Bill generously gave him back enough money to buy some food and advised him not to play again until he covered his losses. The very next afternoon, Wild Bill walked into the saloon and saw somebody sitting in his preferred spot. After some hesitation, he reluctantly decided to join the game, but he set his back towards the bar and the door. A fatal mistake. Jack McCall, who had seen him walk in, had snuck up behind Bill, and he took out a double 45 action pistol and said, "Take that!" and shot Bill in the back of the head, killing him instantly. Bill had been holding a pair of eights and a pair of aces, which has ever been since known as a dead man's hand. Calamity Jane, who showed up to the scene, demanded that they gave him a proper grave for the man she loved. But that's a whole nother story. Thank you.
So we want to thank our sponsors, and we want to thank HEB, FMH Foundation, Friends of Libraries and Literacy, the Morrow Foundation, West Texas National Bank, and the City of Midland for making it possible